popularity, his age, his mental capacity, it's all been in question. How can President Biden hold on to the White House?
That's a great question. I think that the big challenge for them is that the way out of these bad poll numbers is by talking to the American public. Do you hear Karine Jean-Pierre say, well, he's had meetings with me? Okay, well, that's wonderful. I know he's very active between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. as we hear, but we don't actually see. No, this is a president that has had the fewest press conferences, done the fewest interviews of any president in recent memory. And yes, on Friday night, he sat for a very softball interview with MSNBC, but for the most part, he has done nothing to even, he announced for president and he didn't even give a speech to a crowd of supporters. So I think he needs to get out there. But as the poll shows, when he gets out there, that's when potential problems arise, when people start to see the mental acuity in practice. So I do think they're between a rock and a hard place, but there is no way for him to win the presidency in 2024 using the same method that he did in 2020, which is essentially staying in the basement and not getting out there and talking to the American public.
Well, he had a softball interview on Friday, but he sent out a note saying he made a comment that he had a presser, that he had a news conference, which made absolutely no sense. I don't get it.
No. Yeah. He another senior moment potentially there that only just exacerbates the whole questions about mental fitness. And look, I think that we showed a moment from his speech at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. First of all, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is not a good venue for him to connect with the American public. It is the most sanctimonious moment in the entire year when it comes to the media and political coziness that we see. That is not a good way to connect with the American public. No, he needs to get out there. He needs to get into some challenging venues, but also just some venues where he can actually talk to the people, and we can see that on display. If he is not up for that task, then we're going to find that out very quickly, and the polls are going to continue to decline. But there is no way to win this one without getting out there, talking to the media, and talking to the people.
Is there this perception? He seems like a very nice man to a lot of American people. He reminds them of a very dear grandfather. Who doesn't love the grandpa? But the fact is do you think that there's such a low approval rating because so many Americans are concerned that he's just a puppet for the Democratic Party at this point and that someone else is pulling the strings?
I think there's got to be an element of that. Look, I think that he was the regression to the mean in 2020, right? There was lots of other more exciting candidates that were in that gigantic Democratic field. But when push came to shove, they wanted the most moderate, most basic, most plain vanilla candidate they could that could beat Donald Trump. And that's how they settled on Joe Biden. But he has not necessarily governed that way. And we have not seen the complete decrease of the temperature in this cultural in our country that maybe it was promised or we hoped for in 2020. So I think with that at the wins here, we're not going to get that same. He needs to actually show why people want to vote for him rather than just I'm the safest choice. And so I think that that's been very clear. He has not governed that way. I don't think people have felt that he's had his hand on the steering wheel. And as you mentioned, I think that people have started to say, who else is behind this? Because this is not the Joe Biden we remember from his vice presidency or from his time in the Senate.
We have a little bit of time, so I need a really little answer on this. Are you surprised at the results from these polls that show that former President Trump would actually win, considering how much hatred he's received and how polarizing he is as a candidate?
I think we're going to see ups and downs this entire time. I think when Trump's on CNN in a few days, we're going to see whether he can deliver on this idea of appealing to independents. But no, I'm not surprised. These are two very unpopular politicians. It's going to be the pick your best of the worst in terms of a lot of the people's minds. But I think we're going to see fluctuation, and I think Donald Trump absolutely can beat Joe Biden in 2024.
Yeah, a lot of people, CNN saying being criticized for even hosting this event with the former president. More Americans think that he is not trustworthy. At the same time, are they talking to everyday Americans? Are they talking to people in the middle? That's the thing about these polls. All right, Steve Krakauer, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.